I can't. There we go. Now I got it. Okay, another edition of Christianity Outside the Box. And this time we're going to go over a familiar Bible story. 1 Samuel 17, David and Goliath. And we're going to approach a you probably never heard before. Doesn't mean it's right, it's just going to be different. You determine whether or not it applies to you, and if you're ready, we'll go. Okay, I'm going to start reading. And by the valley of Elah, and set the battle in array against, and he had greaves of brass against him, and kill him. Then ye shall be our servants and serve us. And this is always the rule of the enemy. He's got the stacked deck. He's got everything in his favor, but he's offering you a chance. This is not a good bet. Okay, first of all, he's 9.5 feet tall. The average Israelite at that point was about 5.5 feet tall. So he is almost twice as big. And he probably weighed about 800 pounds. And the Israelite probably weighed 125. The average Israelite. But he gives you a chance. This seems like a perfect chance to win against the enemy. The enemy will be my slave. I'll be your slave if you win. Unfortunately, let me hand these to you just so I don't step on them. Unfortunately, some Christians think that's worth it. The problem is I give you power over snakes and scorpions and over all the power of the enemy. I don't have to fight him like this. Right? But he comes and he says, if you fight me and you win, I'll be your slave. I don't want the devil to be my slave. I want him banished from the kingdom. But some people think that it's our job to do battle with the enemy. It is not our job to do battle with the enemy. When he says, I give you power over snakes and scorpions and over all the power of the enemy, what are snakes and scorpions? They are creatures of the dust. Out of dust we were made, and out of dust we will go to. So our battle is the power of the enemy that infects people. That's where our battle is. The battle is not for flesh and blood. The battle is for our mind, our soul, our whole being. It's not. We are not called to fight against the devil. Name one time that Jesus fought against Satan. There isn't one. At best, he said, get thee behind me, Satan, when Peter said something that was influenced by the devil. Okay? Jesus never did battle with Satan. Unfortunately, a lot of Christians think that we have to. I know it used to be popular 20 years ago where people would bind Satan and cast him into the pit. There's no scripture that says we can do. We don't have authority over Satan. Satan is God's problem. Now it says in Revelation 12, I believe, that the angels fought against the dragon and against his angels. It's the angels' job to deal with him. They're the ones that take over. They're the ones that are going to cast him into the pit of fire. They're the ones that are going to overcome. My job, since Genesis 1, is to what? Have dominion over the earth, right? Proclaim the gospel, heal the sick, raise the dead. That's my job. My job is not to battle Satan. Unfortunately, a lot of church thinks different, but that's okay. I don't know of anybody that has fought Satan that has won, unless you're talking about a violinist from Georgia. But that's the only one I've ever heard of that ever won. But no one else has ever won. So it's the idea is to choose our battles. Know what battles you can fight. Know what battles you can win. You cannot win a battle that you don't believe you can win. You will fail every time. Let's read on. And when Saul and all Israel heard those words of the Philistine, they were dismayed and greatly afraid. Now David was the son of an Ephrathite of Bethlehem, Judah, whose name was Jesse, and he had 8 sons. And the man went among men of an old man in the days of Saul. And the 3 eldest sons of Jesse went and followed Saul to the battle. The names of these 3 sons that went to the battle were Eliab, and the firstborn, and the next unto him Abinadab, and the third Shammah. And David was the youngest, and the 3 eldest followed Saul. But David went and returned from Saul, and to feed his father's sheep of Bethlehem. And the Philistine drew near morning and evening, and presented themselves 40 days. And Jesse said unto David his son, Take thou thy brethren an ephah of his parched corn, and these 10 loaves, and run to the camp of thy brethren. And carry these 10 cheeses unto the captain of their 1,000, and look unto how thy brethren fare, and take what's happening, take their pledge, take what's their story, whatever's happening, and bring it back to me, is what he's asking for. Now Saul and they and all the men of Israel were in the valley of Elah, fighting with the Philistines. Most people miss that part. There was fighting going on. They just weren't on 2 sides of the camp. It's just that in those days when they fought, they called a break so they could clear the bodies and the wounded. But there was fighting going on. Goliath went back, then they got at it again. Okay? And and David, verse 20, rose up early in the morning and left the sheep with the keeper, and took and went as Jesse had commanded him, and he came to the trench as the host was going forth to fight, and shouted for the battle. For Israel and the Philistines had put the battle in array, army against army. They were fighting, and this guy came out, and that's all there was to it. No, there was war going on. And they dug trenches on either side to prevent the people from rushing them and overcoming them. Armies had dug a trench so that the other side couldn't just rush armies of the